everybody, it's Christina of CraftyPaws. I'm here to share with you guys two Valentine's Day cards that I've made using, stamps and dies that actually aren't traditionally thought of for Valentine's. The Snowflakes die set, which has a small die frame and a large die frame, are from In Love Art Shop. And I had gotten this as part of my DT package back in the fall, but because of all the things going on with my family, I didn't get a chance to use them for the holiday season. So I thought it's perfect for Valentine's Day cards. And I also had picked up the super cute Picket Fence Studios Foxy stamp set. And I thought that'd be perfect for Valentine's. So I do want to tell you that these snowflake frame dies are very intricate. And it takes a couple of passes through your die cutting machine. And for the large one, I actually slipped in a piece of scratch paper as well, just to make sure all the cuts were all the way through. And then because of all of the detail, I had to use a pokey tool to get out all those little extra pieces. So the one I'm using right now is a Spellbinders Tool-in-One. And I have another one, a We Are Memory Keepers Quick Stick, which has a glue stick at the other side or pickup stick at the other side. Then I'm just showing you for the small card that I'm going to do, I'm using this little howling fox, and I used my stamping tool to stamp it out a couple times just because the ink didn't get good coverage the first time. And I'm going to just do a quick Copic coloring. I haven't done Copic coloring in, gosh, like over 3 months at this point, so I'm a little rusty, but first, I laid down the lightest color, the E11, then I went in with a darker E13, and then I'm adding in the shadowed areas with the E15, and then I'm blending back in with the 11 and the E13. So that's for the brown areas. For the white areas, I like to use a warm color for animals, so I'm using a W2. And there I'm using a 0 just to push back the part that I colored over, the brown part that went into the white area. And now I'm using a W3 to get in darker shadowed in the white areas. And there I'm using the 0 again to push back the areas that I thought got too dark. Now with a Copic multi-liner pen, this is a 0.1. I wanted it to be thick to match the image of the fox. So I just doodled in a couple of hearts and a little dot, so it looks like he's howling kind of a love song or something. And I'm coloring in the hearts with an R29 and an R32, just a little highlight. You can barely see it, but I like those little details of color variation, even in small things like hearts, like these hearts. Then I thought for the background, I wanted to create more than just like a ground. So I thought, oh, it's wintertime. I'm going to give him a snowy ground scene. And I decided to use a B32 and a B quadruple 0. And then I wanted to add some shadowing. So I used a cool gray, a C2, to add some kind of areas that look like, there are little shadowed areas in the snowy ground, definitely under him. Just some areas, this is totally random, obviously, and I just wanted to add some dimension to the ground. And I think it came out looking like it was a little snowy foreground. And then for the sky, I decided to use 2 kind of brighter blues, or actually 3, I think. By the way, if you're interested in any of the Copic colors that I use, they're all going to be listed in my accompanying blog post, which is linked below. Here I'm using a brighter, I think this is a B2, and unfortunately this marker kind of was running low on ink, and I ended up not having this ink in my stash, so I end up having to use a different mid-tone kind of bright blue for the second card, but I'll show you this process again so you can see how easy it is to create a kind of ombre background with these blues. And it really gives like a feeling of a crisp winter day with this kind of bright blue background, whereas the snow is more of an icy blue, purpley almost, with a blue gray, a very pale blue gray. So for the inside sentiment, I'm using one of the stamps. It says, I only howl for you. And this is a tiny little card. And to make it kind of inset, the card inset inside the frame of the snowflake, I had to trim off just the teeny bits of the corners because the inside frame has a kind of rounded edge or corners. So that's it to put the frame of the snowflakes around this tiny little card. And then I'm just going to inset this colored image scene on the front. And so for a little extra sparkle, I'm using a clear Wink of Stella pen to add some shimmer to the hearts and also all around the edges of the snowflake frame. And I think that gives it a really nice shimmer and sparkle. So that's the front of the little tiny card. I'm going to add this as a little secret card around his, in his lunch around Valentine's Day. And now I'm showing you how I glue on two of these frames together. I'm using my favorite wet glue. It's a art glitter glue, and it has a fine tip nozzle, which helps me get into all these little tiny spaces. And I'm just layering on another frame that I die cut off camera so that it adds a little dimension and sturdiness to the card. And I'm going to use these two cute little foxes. One's kind of doing a double take, looking back over his shoulder, and the other one is sitting, looking all cute, striking a pose. And I put the frame around just so I would know where I could place the images without interfering with the frame. And I'm using my stamping tool again to stamp it out twice. These images are a little thick, the ink lines, the drawn lines, so I wanted to make sure I got crisp stamping. So that's why I'm using the stamping tool to do it twice. Now for the sentiment, I wanted to use two sentiments from the stamp set, but kind of alter them. So I'm masking off the part of the stamp that I don't want to use. And it says, I'm glad I caught ya, but I am masking off with some washi tape when I'm doing the inking and then stamping it out without the gotcha. So it says, I'm glad I found ya. And that's the sentiment that I wanted to do on the front. So that's a way to alter sentiment stamps or regular stamps, is to just mask it off with a little bit of washi tape before you ink it, take off the washi tape, and then stamp it out. That way you can do different combinations of sentiments without having to like cut up your stamps, which I hate doing. I know some people don't mind it, but I like to keep my stamps as pristine as possible. Now, this time I'm coloring up the female little fox with a lighter color combination. I'm using an E21 instead of an E11 for the base, and then an E13 and an E15, which was similar to the first fox that I colored up. And I like this lighter look for this little female stamped fox. And I'm just going in and adding each layer. This is my normal system of Copic coloring. Make sure I get the lightest down first, then the mid-tone, then the darkest in the nooks and crannies and kind of where the shadows would be on the image, and then go back in and blend with the mid-tone and the light tone. The white areas I did with the same W2 and W3, and then the inside of the ears I'm coloring in with an R30. And I like that pale color for inside ears. Now here I'm showing you the W2. This fox is a little trickier to color because in the face, it doesn't show exactly. There are hints of lines where the white would be and on the tail, but there really aren't fully defined lines. So I kind of had to make my own. If you're unsure of how you want to color an image, I often take Google Images and type in, cartoon fox or something like that, and look at images to know where one color should stop and another color should start. Again, I'm going in with a light color. This is the E11, and then going in with darker browns. And I decided to go back in with an E21 too for the lighter areas. It seemed I wanted it to be even lighter for the highlighted areas. And then I went in this time with the darkest, the E18, just to make sure I kind of put in the shadowed areas, the darkest areas first. I was a little unclear, like I say, with this image. So I wanted to make sure, did I want the snout to be the darkest, then do a mid-tone? This is the E23. And then I'm doing a point to point. I take the lighter marker in my right hand and the darker marker in my left hand, and I touch the point of the lighter marker to the darker. And then I go in and color a little bit, and that kind of bridges the gap. I thought that the gap between the E18 and the E23 was too large. So that point to point or tip to tip coloring technique is really handy when you don't have all the colors that you necessarily want in your Copic marker set. So I'm blending back in, and then again, I just wanted to show you guys how easy it is to create a kind of snowy hillside look for a easy winter scene. So with the B32, I'm laying in kind of the rich icy tones of the background. And then I decided I would extend beyond that the B quadruple zero, and that gives it a white look without being just the white of the cardstock. I like that really pale kind of ghosty blue gray that the B quadruple zero gives. And then the foreground, coloring that in with the B quadruple zero. I was wondering if I should mix it in a little bit with another color, but I decided I can just make certain areas darker with that C2, where the two colors of the blue combine underneath each of the foxes. I knew that I wanted to kind of create some definition, some little hillsides in the snow. And I knew I didn't want to, try to draw them in with my Copic multi-liner pen. And by the way, I use a multi-liner like for the hearts when I know I'm going to be Copic coloring, because that ink doesn't smear when you use the alcohol markers. So again, this time I'm going to go back in and color in the sky. Again, I'm starting with a B01 for the lightest color, and I'm just going right up to the edge of the ground. And then I'm going to just flick upwards from that area so that I get a nice clean ground start, or like where they meet, the sky and the ground meet, and I'm getting a nice clean edge. And I'm taking care to go around the little fox's ears and around the heads and noses, but going in and making sure I have a good amount of that light blue, that B01, for getting a crisp edge for that sky. And then I'm going from the top and I'm using a B04 to create the darker areas kind of higher up in the sky, less on the horizon. So that would be darker. And I'm using a G01 because I ran out of that B02, like I'd mentioned before, to blend the two together. And I'm sorry, my camera cut out there, it seems, but this is the easy part. I'm just using some glue, that wet glue, to put that frame, that snowflake frame, around this edge of this card. And that's the completed card. Oh no, I decided I wanted to add some shimmer to the snowflakes again here. So I'm using my clear Wink of Stella to add that sparkly shimmer on the frame. And that's the completed card. I hope you enjoyed this process video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, and thanks so much for joining me. I hope you guys are having a wonderful crafty day.